So I'm going to be focusing on authoritarian parenting right now. This is the table of contents. It kind of focuses on what I'm going to be talking about for this presentation. It focuses on what the parenting style is, things like demandingness versus responsiveness, comparisons, the effects on children, and associated outcomes in research, along with cultural and societal influences. And lastly, tips for parents. So the first thing I'm going to be going into is what is authoritarian parenting? There are four distinct parenting styles, and authoritarian parents are really intent at making kids follow the rules. Parenting can be a really difficult task, and that's why it's really important to help build your child's future by choosing the right kind of parenting style for you and making sure that's an efficient parenting style. So there are four distinct parenting styles, but the one I'm going to be focusing on is the authoritarian parenting style. And, they're really intent at making kids follow the rules and they kind of seek total control. Even though the overall objective is to keep kids kind of secure and safe, the style really tends to be extremely demanding and strict. And the rigid rules and harsh punishments make it kind of an unfavorable form of parenting because instead of keeping their kids safe, these kinds of parents actually end up destroying their children's self-esteem. They punish them just because they said so and don't really offer any reasoning. So this slide right here is focusing on demandingness versus responsiveness. Now, according to many scholars, parenting is shaped around two basic dimensions, which are demandingness versus responsiveness. It can also be called control and warmth. So demandingness is really related to the rules and expectations that parents have, while responsiveness is related to the expression of love and attentiveness to children's needs. So when we're looking at authoritarian parents, we can see that they're incredibly demanding and they really expect their commands to be followed without dispute. And such a high level of demandingness and need for control should normally be followed by a really high responsiveness, but unfortunately with this parenting style, it kind of takes place without responsiveness and kind of displays hostility and little emotional attachment. So here we can see there's responsiveness, demandingness, and a lot of the attributes that they have. And this is kind of a visual that I thought would be good to take a look at for a second. It mentions a lot of phrases that can be associated with the different parenting styles. So we have permissive and authoritative, uninvolved and authoritarian. The uninvolved style can also be considered the disengaged style also. And this is kind of comparing the different parenting styles with each other. So there's a clear need for control present in authoritarian parenting style compared to the other ones. Authoritative sounds similar, but it actually allows kids to kind of explore their area without limits, unlike authoritarian parenting, which is really strict. And punishments are infrequent in this parenting style, while in authoritarian parenting, they're very common. And as for the permissive parenting, which is in the middle, there's barely any control or restrictions, while it's kind of the opposite from authoritarian parenting. And then as for the disengaged parenting, there's zero expectations or demands for the child, which is, again, kind of the opposite of authoritarian parenting, where the demands are extremely high. Overall, the authoritarian style tends to be less nurturing and more strict compared to all of these other styles. And then here we have kind of another visual that I thought would be good to look at. There's a clear need for control, obviously, with the authoritarian parenting style, with the focus being on obedience and kind of punishment over discipline, while all of the other ones seem to be kind of a little bit better in their own ways. And then as for the next slide, I'm going to be focusing on the effects of this style on children. So we can see how it's already kind of different from the other parenting styles by being harsh. So we're going to take a look at kind of the effects that it has on the kids when you're being so harsh and forcing them to have to deal with all of these punishments. So Children that have to deal with this are forced to live with the fear of being punished. And dealing with all of this constant stress actually leads to a lot of negative mental health effects. Um, Diana actually discovered that children who belong to such authoritarian families are more moody, less cheerful, and more prone to stress and depression. As you can imagine, children who are in constant fear of being punished are likely to develop extreme anxiety. And this is also supported by other researchers. So, this guy, for example, found that children with authoritarian parents actually have reported higher levels of depression and lower self esteem. This form of parenting practically destroys the bond between the parent and the child, and more secrets are likely to arise as well. So down here at the bottom, we can see the effect on boys has increased aggression and unruliness, while girls have to deal with increased anxiety and unhappiness. And these are some additional associated outcomes. This form of parenting really kinds of makes behavioral problems worse, as you can see. Um, all of the kind of bad and negative emotions seem to rise, while a lot of the positive ones kind of see a decrease. So this is incredibly harmful to a child who's still developing. It's not just at home where they experience these emotions. It can honestly be anywhere. Authoritarian parents really just cause insecurity in their children, which makes them more afraid of going to school. And if school is supposed to be like a safe place where they're allowed to have freedom, um, then they really don't have access to that safe place anymore. The constant state of worry that they have to be in is also horrible for their physical health as well. And this section is kind of focusing on research. So some people actually advocate for this kind of parenting style by claiming that it helps children follow rules better. And honestly, it might be true, it might not be true, but it's really important to understand the research that's been done on this parenting style, which really focuses on the detrimental effects that the style has on children. So a specific study done found that increased insecurity and inferiority, along with a decrease in self-confidence as a result of this form of parenting. And Jean Wolfe examined the impact on self-esteem of children. So the study kind of focused on children between 11 and 12 years old and involved 84 kids receiving a questionnaire. And from this research, it's found that there was a significantly higher scholastic, global, and physical self-esteem in children of parents practicing authoritative parenting in comparison to the authoritarian parenting. And it's really unfortunate how many people believe that ruling with an iron fist is the best way to keep kids in line and under control. This is kind of the opposite of what Martin discovered, which was that harsh discipline and psychological control were actually the biggest predictors of a child's behavior worsening over time. So as you can see over here, we have harsh discipline and plus the expectation of children to obey rigid rules without any kind of explanation. Both of these factors combined ultimately makes their behavior problems worse and doesn't make them better rule followers. And then nearing the end, I decided to focus on cultural and societal influences that kind of, I don't know, I'll get more into it. So there's a variety of these factors that actually influence the prevalence of authoritarian parenting. And this can include the economic conditions and their values and beliefs. Many cultures have like a hierarchy system in place due to their respect for the elderly. And as a result, such a strong kind of parental authority is actually enforced so kids learn obedience and respect. And this is true for also certain religions who emphasize obedience. So we have traditional cultures that expect their authority to be kind of obeyed without question. And this can kind of be prominent in Asian countries and Latin American cultures as well, since the role of the parent there kind of carries greater inherent authority compared to the West. And due to this cultural norm in a lot of other places, many minority cultures have been inaccurately labeled as authoritarian. In fact, in 2006, Rudy compared collectivist and individualistic mothers discovering how the mothers of the collectivistic group had shown more authoritarianism than the individualist mothers. And then lastly, here we have kind of some tips for parents that I thought would be important to go over. So, nearly half of American parents are now choosing a more authoritarian parenting style than before. Many parents feel like they need to take more control over children's academic pursuits. Um, but giving kids limited independence and taking time to understand them can have a very positive effect on their self-esteem. So it's important to consider all of the effects that we talked about when choosing this kind of style or any kind of parenting style for kids. And, you know, after everything that we went over, it doesn't seem like authoritarian parenting style is the best. So hopefully we'll see kind of a decline in it and rises in some of the better ones like authoritative parenting styles. And then lastly, this is my sources that I've used to help me complete the presentation. Thank you for watching. I hope that you learned some more stuff about authoritarian parenting.